Right now, let's head out to the fan hotline. It covers the team for Cleveland.com. Joins us every single Friday at 8. It's Coach Riz, Lance Reisland. Coach, what's going on?
Hey, Jake, what's going on, my friend?
I mean, listen, after last week, I'm just looking for any win here. I didn't think it was going to go as bad as it did, but things went south, and we've certainly transitioned from, the offense almost beat Cincinnati to pretty much a full reset, it feels like, coming into week 3.
Well, I would say this. As a coach, there's two different ways to look at it. So sometimes you just go against a team that physically dominates you, and they scheme it better, and they have better players, and the matchups are terrible. I don't feel that happened with the Browns last week. I feel like they shot themselves in the foot. Now, obviously, the Ravens, they have Lamar Jackson. They did some good things. But if you think about the punt return, the punt block, the interception, all those things kind of added up. And so, with going at the end of the third quarter, it was 20-10, and they're in the football game. So as a coach, you go in and say, if you play a cleaner game, it doesn't mean you're going to win, but at least because if you play a clean game and you lose, it's because the other team's better. And you can accept that. You can't accept when you beat yourself.
All right, so take me through here going into week 3. We got the Packers obviously coming up on Sunday, Lance. Do you see a legitimate path to the Browns getting a win in this game?
Well, yeah, and I think it started, I said this to you before, but I think it's the defense. The defense has faced two really good offenses. This offense is good. LaFleur, I think, is an outstanding coordinator, but they got some guys out. Watson's out, Reed's out. Tom, he's got an oblique kind of injury. Kraft, he was one of my keys to stop earlier in the week. He's kind of banged up, so you don't know how he's going to be. So this Browns defense, I think, has an opportunity to not only play very well, but maybe set that offense up with a short field and maybe create a turnover. And obviously that's how it's going to be against these elite teams until this offense gets going. I also think Junkins is going to be, after a full week of practice, should be a little bit better. I think those, for me, I'm going to be watching those tackles. Those tackles really struggled the first 2 weeks. That's where they got to improve on offense. But I think the defense can really create some short fields for this offense. And obviously they got to punt it well. They got to play better special teams as well. But yeah, this is not an impossible thing. The problem is that Packer defense is really, really good.
They certainly are. I want to focus on a second here. You bring up the Browns defense and creating short fields for the offense. So help me break this down, Lance. The team right now has come up with 0 turnovers, and they've obviously been really good when it comes to stopping the run, holding teams to short yardage, keeping points off the board for the most part there up until the end of the Ravens game. But they have 0 turnovers through 2 games. They created just 4 interceptions last year. Is this something where you look at a defense and you say, okay, they've been good and the turnovers part's just unlucky, or is there something they could be doing differently to help maximize those opportunities and help the offense by creating a takeaway or a turnover?
Well, the hard thing is, Jake, is that when they're in so much man coverage, when you're in man coverage, that's one of the tells for a quarterback because the eyes would normally be on the receiver. And how you get some interceptions is you play through the receiver, but your eyes are in the backfield because you're in zone. And when you're in zone, you can keep things underneath you so you can get bad throws and things like that. So them being in so much man coverage, it's hard for those corners to get interceptions. It just really is. The guy that's got to make those interceptions is that free safety. He's got to be a little bit more active left to right because he's basically a center fielder, especially in passing situations. So it is really hard to create turnovers. I think the turnovers come from the Browns are strip sacks, tips inside, things like that, because being in man, they're never going to be able to, those corners are going to be locked in. So when the ball is underthrown, they won't know because they're in zone. They're in man coverage. If they were in zone, they can get some of those. So maybe that's because they're struggling and they're struggling with some depth there. Maybe they play a little bit more zone or man where they're off a little bit and they can still get their eyes in the backfield. But it's not, it's a product of, you can't have everything as a defense. That's one area that they need to improve on just because that offense is struggling so bad. So that's my thing. I've said that all week. It's really hard to create turnovers in man, but they're going to have to figure that out because they need some short fields.
Okay, so let's go to the offense. You highlighted the Packers' defense. They've been really good against the run so far early in these first 2 weeks. Do the Browns, do they essentially need to just overcome that and get the run game started this week? And do you think they can do it with Judkins with a full week of practice?
Well, I do, and the best way to stop Parsons is elite, but the guy who really causes problems for an offensive coordinator is Rashawn Gary because he's 280 pounds. Micah Parsons, you're going to do a ton of chipping. I think they're going to run right at him because that's the way you slow down an elite pass rusher who's 250-ish pounds. So not that he won't make plays, but you got to body punch those elite pass rushers who aren't real heavy. Rashawn Gary's the guy that gives you problems because he's 280 plus. So now he can play the run, he can play inside, he can play outside. So they have two of those guys. Then they have Quay Walker, who I think is a highly underrated linebacker. He's 240 pounds. He's 6'3". And then this corner, Nixon. So he's a guy, he's playing at a really, really high level. But the thing that they do, they don't, besides Parsons and Gary, everybody else is really solid. So they don't have a lot of holes. So the Browns have to play at a high level. I'd like to see the Browns kind of simplify a little bit and try to make sure everybody's, they're missing too many blocks. They're having too many run-throughs, and that's just because there's lots of motion and lots of movement. I think they need to simplify. I think they need to go really rely on the run game. And even if the run game isn't working, you got to shorten the game. You have to punt it well. It doesn't hurt you to run the ball on third down and then punt it on fourth down. Do everything you can not to turn the ball over, because like you said, you look at last week, those turnovers are what turned that game, and that's what they need to create. But if you cannot turn it over, you can be in the game because this defense I believe, can't control the Packer offense. However, it's going to be a dogfight, and the one thing they can't do is turn it over early, or they could get boat raced because that's how football works, especially with momentum.
Lance Reisland, Coach Riz, with us here on the hotline. Hey, if they're able to flip things around, is there almost a moral victory in the offense just looking good this week, even if they don't get a win?
No, I'm an anti Jake. I'm an anti-moral victory guy. These guys are pros. These tackles got to play better. They're doing some things like, once again, if you get beat, I'm okay with it. Free runners, I don't like. Guys who are unblocked, things like that. Those things bother you as an offense coordinator. If Micah Parsons just beat you, but you have him accounted for, it's not great, but as a coach, you go, listen, we had a plan for him. He was just better. So that's, I'm not a moral victory guy. Now, the operation's been good. They've done some good things. I think offensively, if they can run the ball a little bit better, it will at least shorten the game and limit the amount of touches that offense can get. And then your defense, which is your strength, comes out there fresh. Too many 3-and-outs right now, so they got to extend some drives, 6, 8 plays. Even if they punt it, they got to give that defense some rest. But to answer your question, no, moral victories don't do anything. Now, you learn from them, but they don't do anything for me in terms of winning or losing. You got to win, and that's the bottom line. You got to figure out a way to win, whatever you got to do.
Now, you're giving me the Kevin Stefanski, you got to protect the football, which obviously is a Herculean task, but it seems so simple when you say it. We've seen the offense sort of struggle with the short stuff, not have explosive plays. They have one run over 10 yards at this point, 2 games in. Does there need to be almost, I don't want to say an uncorking of Joe Flacco because it sounds like you're just letting him go buck wild, but do they need to try to extend the field and go down the field more with the pass game?
Well, in this offense, that happens with run game because those safeties, now you're going to get a safety down in the box. They're going to crowd the line of scrimmage more because they have to stop the run. When you don't do that, you can play 2 safeties. It's hard to take shots over top because they're going to keep those guys in front of you. So it really does start with the run game, even if you're not super successful, because you have to take some body punches. Now, there's a fine line with Joe Flacco. If letting him loose, he will create some plays. There's no doubt about it. He always has. But we've seen with Joe Flacco, if you let him loose, there's probably a good probability that he's going to intercept the ball as well. He throws some interceptions. And that just puts that defense at such a, I think you got to play it close to the best. That's me as a coach. And going back to how does this happen? Well, it happens by winning on first down, because if you can make the defense respect run or pass, that's how you limit turnovers. When you get the passing situations only, now you start seeing those exotic fronts, the blitzes, the coverages. That's when quarterbacks make mistakes. So you have to win on first down, or at least be a little bit more successful, so there's a hint of the run on second down. So that's where they're at. They have to win on first down because that will help stretch the field, and that will also protect the football.
Would it have been too much of a panic move for you if they considered going to Dillon Gabriel in week 3?
Absolutely. I think the progression they're doing with those guys, even watching them every day during camp, I think they have a plan and I think they're sticking to it. And whether we like the plan or not, that's okay with me as long as they're sticking with what they thought was going to work. That's why they're the coaches and the GM. So whatever they decided, but yes, I absolutely think that would be a panic move, especially against a defense like this week. Now, once again, I'm not a real big believer in playing a guy because, you want to take a look at him. That loses a locker room really, really fast. That's when you talk about culture. You're not in the business of developing, during the season. You're in the business of winning football games. And I know that's really tough for the Browns now because they have to see these guys. But the number one priority to keep that locker room interested is that everything's got to be, kind of pointed towards winning. And I think with Flacco right now, watching him every day, he was better than those guys. So if those guys get to the point where they're as good, then yes, they probably should get a look, especially if they're losing. But if they're not there yet, I don't think they play until they're there. I don't think they play because you need to take a look at them.
Again, Coach Riz, Lance Reisland with us here on the hotline. Let's take a look at the offensive line, Coach. I want to start with really just the tackles. I want to start at left tackle, though, with DeJuan Jones. Last week, he gets taken off the field multiple times for what now throughout the week DeJuan told us was basically precautionary with the heat for a guy that's dealt with heat issues going back to training camp and having to get carted off the field. Is it fair to take a guy at this level off the field as a precautionary to you, or is this signed to sort of your left tackle should be out there until something actually shows up and then you should move on from there?
Well, if it's a smoke screen, then you want him out there. If it's not, if he's having some heat issues, then obviously you got to take care of his health first. But you'll really never know what was the actual. Was he having heat, or he didn't play well for week one? So is that the issue too, where they want to get a look at somebody else? You don't really know, and obviously moving forward, then he has to get himself in shape where the heat doesn't bother him. And as a pro, that's what you should be doing all day. What you eat, how you carry yourself, the amount of liquid you get, your hydration level 2 to 48 hours before the game or 2 days out kind of deal. So there's a lot he has to do, which I'm assuming he's doing. But those tackles have to play better, and they have to know who they're blocking. They're blocking. They're not getting to the second level. They're not getting off on double teams. They're not getting to the linebackers when they're getting off those double teams. They have to bend better. He lost weight, but it almost has hurt him because he's a great athlete and he used his size. Now he's not, for some reason, he's not bending real well as he gets to the second level. Whatever the issue was, they got to put it in the past and they got to move forward. And he's got to be more physical, as well as the other tackle, Lucas, for these guys to have a chance and to run the football.
When does Jack Conklin's health become a concern with him even moving forward with this team, period? It feels like Jack's basically feels like he gets hurt every sort of year for a period of time, and we're already at, a fear of missing him for 2 weeks this early in the season.
Well, he didn't look good. A couple clips I saw the other day, he did not look good. And a couple people I talked to said he didn't look real healthy. The problem is for Jack, in my opinion, is he's a very physical guy. And he kind of matches the mentality of those three interior guys where he's real tough. He's really big on contact. And with that, you get it seems like as he's gotten a little bit older, his toughness and his willingness to get in the mix and his willingness to be physical with defensive linemen kind of hurts him as he's gotten older. So it's a concern because, first of all, he's a really good player, but his style of play is what the Browns like. But it seems as he's extended his career here, that physicality is kind of beating him down a little bit, right? Again, like body punches. He's unable to get healthy, and I don't think he can play any other way because if he plays any other way, he'll be unsuccessful. So yeah, it is a concern. His age is a concern, and just the idea of that physicality day in and day out makes it really worrisome that he can not only come back, but can he consistently be in there for week in and week out? Because that's what's killing these guys, the continuity.
All right, Lance, I'm going to get you one more before we get you out of here. I do want to take a little look at the special teams after last week. Bubba Ventrone has gotten a lot of praise across the league, obviously internally with the Browns across his tenure. But how fair is it now of him to be catching flack? And is it right for the Browns to be looking internally and asking Bubba to be making corrections and doing better given the fact of the return game didn't look great? You had the punt block. The kicking situation has been a struggle. I mean, it feels like the only real highlight we've gotten, even you look multiple years out, has been Corey Bojorquez.
Well, yeah, obviously you're the coach, right? And you're in charge of special teams. That's what comes with being, the assistant head coach. You're getting paid that way. And he's in charge of the third phase, which is, a third of the game. And for me, the kickers are always doing their own thing. I'll never put on a coach with kickers. But the thing that bothered me last week is they punted it well last week and they made all their kicks and they played terribly on special teams. And if you look at like the punt block, it was the idea that, Hickman had to block a bigger guy. I'm not sure if schematically that's the right thing to do. We've all been there where you get, the other coaches do a good job too. But then fundamentally, he kind of took the guy in with his shoulder and didn't take him on square. So they've had issues with like squeezing lanes and being, not being fundamentally sound, and their techniques haven't been exactly what he wants them to be. Now, is it because they're coaching it and they're not getting it, or are they not getting coached? And there's a big difference there. And obviously, as the weeks go along, if you see the same mistake over and over, who is that on? And if it's on a player, then you got to get a new player in there. So obviously they're going to have to scheme things up. They're going to have to use some bigger guys if teams are going to bring heavy guys on punt block. And just the idea that they're losing that phase. So usually that phase is kind of like a wash between teams. They're losing that now. So they're losing on offense, they're losing on special teams, and they're absolutely dominating on defense. But you lose 2 or 3 phases and you lose the ball game.
Lance, always good to talk to you. Obviously looking forward to listening to you and leading up into you coming up on Sunday, as you'll be alongside JP, 10 o'clock until kickoff on the Browns Tailgate Show right here on The Fan. But always good to talk to you, and we appreciate you.
Absolutely, Jake. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.